6 months passed, and Space Station Alpha 7 had become famous across the galaxy. News of Kethra's amazing abilities had spread to every civilized world, and her story inspired beings everywhere who felt different or unwanted. Jin-Woo watched, with love and pride, as she transformed from a frightened refugee into a leader who gave hope to the hopeless. The first refugee ship arrived on a Tuesday. It was a small damaged vessel carrying 12 outcasts from the Rigelian Confederacy. They had been exiled for having unusual mental abilities that their society feared Kethra welcomed them personally and helped them find quarters on the station. Soon more ships came carrying beings that their own species had rejected. There was Zixka, a Centauri engineer whose forearms were considered deformed, but who could build machines of incredible complexity. There was Morlan, an Andromedan poet, whose writings were banned on his home world for being too emotional. There was Telvin, a young Syrian whose scales changed color with his mood, something his people considered a shameful weakness. Each refugee brought unique gifts that their original societies had been too blind to see. Kethra worked with Jin-Woo to create new protocols for accepting and integrating these special beings. They established workshops where refugees could develop their abilities and contribute to the station's research projects. The hydroponics bay became Kethra's special project. She grew plants from dozens of worlds, creating a garden that was like no place else in the galaxy. The different species of flora should not have been able to grow together, but Kethra's touch made impossible things happen. Her bioluminescent patterns seemed to communicate, with the plants encouraging them to thrive in alien soil. Jin-Woo often found her there in the evening, surrounded by glowing flowers and singing trees. Her skin would pulse with gentle light as she tended to her garden, and he would sit quietly watching. The most beautiful sight in the universe. But their peaceful time was interrupted when emergency signals began coming from Vorthak space. A plague had broken out on their home worlds, spreading faster than their medical science could contain. Millions were dying, and their rigid genetic practices had made them vulnerable to the disease. The irony was bitter. The Vorthak had spent generations eliminating genetic diversity from their population. They had cast out or killed anyone who was different. Now their quest for genetic perfection had created a weakness that threatened their entire civilization. Ambassador Veltar contacted the station again, but this time he was not making demands. His proud face showed desperation and fear. "The Empire needs help," he said, though the words seemed to cause him physical pain. "Our greatest scientists cannot find a cure for this plague." Jin-Woo looked at Kethra, knowing that the decision had to be hers. The people who had tortured and rejected her were now asking for her aid she could refuse, and no one would blame her. The Vorthak had earned whatever fate awaited them. But Kethra surprised everyone with her response. "I will help," she said, "but not for free. The Empire must agree to my conditions. Name them," Veltar said quickly. "First, you will establish sanctuary worlds where Vorthak outcasts can live freely without persecution. Second, you will change your genetic policies to encourage diversity instead of uniformity. Third, you will publicly admit that your treatment of different individuals was wrong and apologize to all those you harmed. The demands were reasonable, but they would require the Vorthak to change their entire way of thinking." Veltar was silent for long minutes while he consulted with his superiors. Finally, he spoke again. "The Empire agrees to your terms," he said. "If you can save our people, we will implement the changes you require." Kethra began working immediately. She contacted other gifted refugees across the galaxy and assembled a team of researchers whose unique abilities complemented each other. They worked day and night, analyzing the plague and searching for weaknesses in its structure. The solution came from an unexpected source. Telvin, the young Syrian whose color changing scales had been considered shameful, possessed a rare genetic marker that made him immune to the plague. His scales changed color because his immune system was constantly adapting to new threats, using Telvin's genetic template, Kethra, and her team developed a cure that could save the Vorthak. But the treatment required ongoing genetic diversity to remain effective. The rigid empire would have to embrace the very differences they had spent millennia trying to eliminate. When the cure was delivered to Vorthak space, it worked perfectly. Billions of lives were saved, and the plague was contained. But the real change came in the months that followed. The Empire began to implement Kethra's demanded reforms slowly and reluctantly. At first, then, with growing enthusiasm as they saw the benefits, outcasts who had been hiding in fear came forward and offered their unique gifts to society. Vorthak science advanced more in 1 year than it had in the previous century. Artists and dreamers and philosophers emerged from hiding, bringing beauty and wonder to a culture that had forgotten. Both Jin Woo received a promotion to head Earth's new Department of Galactic Inclusion. His job was to coordinate humanity's efforts to help refugee populations across the galaxy. The work was challenging but deeply rewarding, as more and more species began to follow the human example of valuing diversity. Kethra became the first non-human to receive honorary Earth citizenship. The ceremony was attended by representatives from 43 different species and broadcast live across the galaxy. Her acceptance speech brought tears to eyes that had never cried before. But the greatest moment came when Jin Woo finally asked her to marry him. He did it in the hydroponics bay, surrounded by flowers from 100 worlds, as the stars wheeled overhead through the transparent dome. Her skin blazed with every color in the spectrum, and some that had no names, as she said, yes. The patterns of light that flowed across her body were so beautiful that the wedding footage became the most viewed recording in galactic history. The ceremony itself was unlike anything ever seen. A human minister performed the service, while representatives from dozens of species offered blessings in their own traditions. Kethra wore a dress woven from fiber-optic threads that glowed with her emotions, and Jin Woo wore a formal uniform decorated with medals from grateful worlds. Their love story had become legend across the galaxy, proving that beauty came not from conformity, but from the courage to see past surface differences to the wonder within. The Vorthak's intended insult had become humanity's greatest gift. As they exchanged vows, Jin Woo looked into Kethra's glowing eyes and made a silent promise. He would spend his life helping her build a galaxy where every being could shine with their unique light, where difference was celebrated instead of feared. The universe was vast enough for every kind of beauty, and together they would make sure everyone knew it. Their wedding night was spent in the observatory, watching the birth of new stars in distant nebulae. Kethra's research had shown them where to look, and together they witnessed the cosmic dance of creation that would continue long after they were gone. Jin Woo held his wife close and thought about the journey that had brought them together. From a mysterious gift in a containment pod to this moment of perfect happiness. The path had been marked by courage, compassion, and the willingness to see beauty where others saw only ugliness. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There were more refugees to help, more species to contact, and more barriers to break down. But tonight was perfect, complete, and filled with the kind of love that could light up the darkness between the stars. Jin Woo sent a message to Earth Command that changed everything. He told them that Kethra had requested political asylum and that humans did not return refugees to places where they would be persecuted. His superiors were angry, but Jin Woo stood firm. He would protect the woman he loved no matter what the cost. While the politicians argued, Kethra made a discovery that would shake the galaxy. She had been working with the station's astronomical equipment trying to map the cosmic radiation. Patterns that only her unique eyes could see. What she found was beyond anyone's wildest dreams. Jin Woo. "I need you to see this," she called excitedly from the main observatory. Her skin was blazing with patterns of excitement and wonder. "Look at these." Readings. The screen showed data that looked like random noise to Jinwoo, but Kethra's eyes were glowing brighter than he had ever seen them. "There is a pattern hidden in the background radiation," she explained. "It shows the location of something that should not exist according to current science." What kind of something, Jinwoo asked, though he could already tell from her expression that it was important. "A natural hyperspace gateway," she whispered. "A tunnel through space that could cut travel, time between star systems from months to days. It is hidden in the Corona Nebula about 50 light years from here." Jinwoo stared at the data, trying to understand what this meant. If Kethra was right, this discovery could revolutionize space travel. It would make humanity one of the most important civilizations in the galaxy. Every species would want to use the gateway, and Earth would control access to it. But their celebration was cut short when long-range sensors detected incoming ships. 6 Vorthak warships dropped out of hyperspace and took positions around the station. Their weapons were powered and their shields were raised for battle. A transmission came from the lead ship and Ambassador Veltar appeared on the screen. His face looked like it was carved from cold stone, and his eyes held no warmth or mercy. "You have something that belongs to the Vorthak Empire," he said in a voice like winter wind. "Return our property immediately, and we will allow your station to continue existing." "She is not property," Jinwoo replied, keeping his voice steady. "Kethra is a sentient being with the right to choose her own destiny. The creature is a failed experiment that stole sacred Vorthak genetic material by continuing to exist." Veltar said, "We demand her immediate return. She will be properly disposed of this time." "Over my dead body," Jinwoo said. And he meant every word. "That can be arranged," Veltar replied coldly. "You have 1 hour to comply, or we will take our property by force." Transmission ended, and alarms began blaring throughout the station. The crew rushed to battle stations, but everyone knew they could not win against 6 warships with their single defense platform. But Kethra had other ideas. She went to the main command center and placed her hands on the central control console. Her skin began to glow so brightly that everyone had to shield their eyes. "What are you doing?" Jinwoo asked. "Something the Vorthak never taught me," she replied. "I am becoming one with your technology." Her light patterns spread from her hands into the console, and suddenly every system on the station began working better than it ever had. The shields became stronger, the weapons became more accurate, and the sensors could see further into space than should have been possible. But the most amazing thing was how Kethra could control everything at once. She was thinking with the station's computer brain and seeing with its sensor eyes. She had turned the entire station into an extension of her own body. The Vorthak ships attacked expecting an easy victory. Instead, they found themselves fighting something they had never encountered before. The station's weapons fired with impossible accuracy, hitting weak points in the enemy. Ships that their own computers should not have been able to detect. Kethra fought like a goddess of technology. Her consciousness flowed through every circuit and processor on the station. She could predict where the enemy ships would move before. Their own pilots knew she could repair damage faster than the Vorthak could cause it. During the battle, something else happened that no one expected. A massive solar storm erupted from the system's star, threatening to disrupt communications and navigation across 3 star systems. Billions of lives would be in danger if ships and stations lost their guidance systems. Without being asked, Kethra reached out through the communication networks and began recalibrating satellites and navigation, beacons across entire sectors of space. Her mind touched systems light years away, fixing problems before they could cause disasters. She saved the Vorthak ships too, even though they were trying to kill her, when their navigation failed in the solar storm. She guided them to safety. Her compassion extended even to her enemies. The battle ended with the Vorthak ships retreating, but Ambassador Veltar was not finished. He opened a communication channel, and his face appeared on every screen on the station. He underestimated the creature he admitted. His voice was different now, filled with something that might have been respect or fear. The Empire made an error in judgment. You made more than an error, Kethra replied. Her voice came from every speaker on the station at once. You threw away something precious because it did not fit your narrow ideas of perfection. Other alien ships began arriving, drawn by reports of the battle. Representatives from the peaceful Altherian collective came to offer Kethra a position as their chief science advisor. The scholarly Nexus Federation wanted her to join their Academy of Advanced Research. Jin Wu watched with pride as delegation after delegation offered Kethra opportunities that the Vorthak had never given her. Every species in the local sector wanted to work with the being who had saved their communication networks and shown such incredible abilities. But Kethra politely refused them all. I have found my home, she told them. Through the station's communication system, her words reached across the galaxy. This is where I choose to stay. Ambassador Veltar made one final attempt to reclaim her. The Empire will offer you anything, he said. Status, wealth, power beyond imagination. You could return as a high-ranking citizen. Kethra's response was broadcast to every ship in the system. I was never a citizen of your empire. She said I was property to be discarded when convenient. Now I am free, and I choose to remain free among people who see my worth. The Vorthak ships left, but Jin Wu knew they would be back. The Empire had realized too late that they had thrown away someone who could have made them the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. That night, Jin Wu found Kethra in the observatory. She was back in her normal body, no longer connected to the station's systems, but still glowing softly with contentment. You could have gone with any of those delegations. He said, you could have had anything you wanted. I already have everything I want, she replied. She took his hand in her long, graceful fingers. I have freedom, respect, and love. What more could anyone need? Jin Wu looked out at the stars and thought about how much had changed since that day when he opened the containment pod. The Vorthak had sent him their ugliest gift, but he had found the most beautiful treasure in the galaxy. Tomorrow there would be new challenges. The politicians on Earth were still demanding answers, and other species were asking questions about humanity's new alien ally. But tonight, Jin Wu was content to hold the woman he loved and watch the stars wheel overhead. The galaxy had become a much more interesting place. 2 months had passed since the pirate attack, and life on the station had changed in wonderful ways. Kethra was no longer the frightened, broken creature who had arrived in the containment pod. She moved through the corridors with confidence, and her skin patterns glowed with happiness. Most of the time, Jin Wu found himself spending more and more time with her. He would bring her meals, and they would talk for hours about everything from quantum physics to human poetry. Kethra was fascinated by human culture, especially the things that the Vorthak would consider useless, like art and music and stories about love. Why do humans create beautiful things that serve no practical purpose? She asked one evening. They were sitting in the observation deck watching stars wheel slowly past the windows. Her skin was glowing softly with curious blue and silver patterns. Jin Wu thought about the question for a long time. Beauty makes life worth living, he said finally. Without art and music and stories, we would just be machines that eat and work and die. We create beautiful things because they remind us that we are more than just survival. Kethra listened to his words with the intense focus she gave to everything that mattered to her. Among my people's survival is everything, she said. Beauty is considered a weakness that makes you soft and vulnerable, but I think your way is better. She began to show Jin Wu how her skin patterns worked. Each color and movement had meaning like a language, written in light. When she was happy, the patterns flowed like gentle waves. When she was thinking hard, they pulsed in complex geometric shapes. When she was sad, they barely glowed at all. Jinwoo learned to read her emotions through the light on her skin. It was more intimate than words, because she could not hide her feelings the way humans could with facial expressions. Her patterns told him everything about how she felt, and she began to trust him enough to let him see her deepest thoughts. Jinwoo brought her to his quarters and showed her his collection of human music. He played everything from classical symphonies to folk songs to modern electronic compositions. Kethra listened to each piece with wonder growing in her glowing eyes. "This one," she said when he played a love song. Her skin erupted in patterns of gold and rose pink. "What is it about? It sounds different from the others." Jinwoo felt his face get warm. "It is about two people who care for each other very deeply." He explained, "They want to be together forever, and they promise to love each other no matter what happens." Kethra was quiet for a long time while the music played. Her patterns shifted through colors that Jinwoo had never seen before, finally settling into a soft, warm glow that reminded him of sunrise. "We do not have this concept among my people," she said. "Vorthak choose mates based on genetic compatibility and social status. There are no songs about feelings. Do you think that is why your people threw you away?" Jinwoo asked gently. "Because you could feel things they had forgotten how to feel." "Maybe," Kethra said. Her voice was very quiet. "I always wondered why others seemed so cold, why they never seemed to care about beauty or dreams or the mystery of the stars. I thought something was wrong with me." "Nothing is wrong with you," Jinwoo said, and he meant it with his whole heart. "You are the most amazing person I have ever met. Your people were fools to waste such a gift." Kethra looked at him with those incredible changing eyes, and Jinwoo felt something shift in his chest like a door opening in his heart. "You really think I am not ugly?" she asked. "Even though I look so different from humans." Jinwoo moved closer to her until he could see his reflection in her glowing eyes. "You are beautiful," he said, and his voice came out rougher than he intended, not despite being different, but because you are different. Your differences make you who you are, and who you are is wonderful. Her skin blazed with patterns so bright and beautiful that Jinwoo had to blink. The colors swirled and danced like aurora in a night sky, and he realized she was showing him emotions that had no names in any human language. Over the following weeks, their friendship deepened into something neither of them had expected. Jinwoo found himself thinking about Kethra when she was not around. He would save interesting things to show her, and he felt happier when she smiled. Kethra began to seek him out when she felt lonely or confused, and she started to glow more brightly when he entered a room. The crew began to notice the change in their captain. Jinwoo smiled more often and seemed more relaxed. He stopped working late into the night because he would rather spend time talking with Kethra about the mysteries of the universe. Sora was the first to say something to him. "You care about her," she observed one day while they were reviewing medical reports. "Not just as a refugee or a friend. You care about her the way a man cares about a woman." Jinwoo tried to deny it, but Sora was too good at reading people. "She is not human," he said, as if that explained everything. So what Sora replied, "Love does not care about species or planets or what people look like on the outside. It cares about what people are like inside. And inside she is beautiful." Hyunsik was less supportive when he figured out what was happening. This could cause problems with Earth Command. He warned Jinwoo, "The politicians will not like their station captain falling in love with an alien, especially one that belongs to the Vorthak." "She does not belong to anyone," Jinwoo said, and his voice carried a warning. "Kethra is free to make her own choices about her life." But the universe had other plans. 3 months after Kethra arrived, a message came from Earth Command ordering Jinwoo to prepare for the return of the Vorthak gift to its original owners. The politicians had decided that keeping Kethra might damage relations with the powerful Vorthak Empire. Jinwoo read the message 3 times before he could believe what he was seeing. They wanted him to put Kethra back in the containment pod and ship her back to the people who had abused and rejected her. They wanted him to sacrifice her freedom for political convenience. That night he found Kethra in the hydroponics bay, where she often went when she needed to think. She had grown plants from seeds she had smuggled in her hair when the Vorthak cast her out. Now the bay was full of strange, beautiful flowers that glowed with their own light. "Earth wants to send me back," she said without looking up from the flowers she was tending. Her skin patterns were dim and sad. "I heard Nara talking about the message." Jinwoo felt anger and determination burning in his chest like a star being born. "That is not going to happen," he said. "I will not let them send you back to people who will hurt you, but you could get in trouble with your superiors." Kethra said she finally looked at him, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I do not want to cause problems for you or your crew." Jinwoo knelt beside her among the glowing flowers and took her long, graceful hands in his human ones. "You are not causing problems," he said. "You are the best thing that has happened to this station to me in years. I would rather lose my commission than lose you." Kethra's skin blazed with patterns of gold and silver and deep blue that reminded Jinwoo of nebulae where new stars were born. "You would do that for me," she whispered. "I would do anything for you," Jinwoo replied, and as he said the words, he realized they were completely true. "I think I love you, Kethra." Her skin became so bright that the whole hydroponics bay lit up like day, and Jinwoo knew without needing words that she felt the same way the Vorthak had meant to insult humanity by giving them their ugliest gift, but instead they had given Jinwoo the most precious thing in the galaxy. 3 weeks passed since Kethra arrived at the space station. She was getting stronger every day thanks to Sora's careful medical treatment. Her strange markings glowed brighter now, and she could walk around the station without help. The crew was starting to see that she was not the broken creature the Vorthak had described. Tai Min was working in the engine room when the main power core started making weird noises. He had been an engineer for 15 years, but he could not figure out what was wrong. The diagnostic computers showed nothing unusual, but the humming sound was getting louder. Every hour, Jinwoo brought Kethra down to see if she could help. He thought maybe her different way of seeing things might spot something they missed. When she entered the engine room, her eyes immediately started glowing brighter like they did when she was thinking hard. She walked slowly around the massive power core, her long fingers hovering just above the metal surfaces. She did not touch anything at first, but her face showed deep concentration. The patterns on her skin began to pulse in complex rhythms that seemed to match the rhythm of the machines there. Kethra said, pointing to a small panel near the bottom of the core. "Something is wrong inside that section. The energy flow is blocked like water trying to move through a bent pipe." Taemin looked at his instruments again, but they still showed normal readings. "How can you tell?" he asked. "We have the best scanners in the fleet, and they see nothing wrong." Kethra knelt down and placed her palm against the metal panel. Her twisted fingers that the Vorthak called deformed spread out like the roots of a tree seeking water. Her skin began to glow where it touched. The machine and her eyes closed in deep focus. "I can feel the electricity moving," she said. Her voice was soft and dreamy, like someone talking in their sleep. "It flows through the circuits like blood, through veins. But here there is a tiny crack smaller than a human hair. It will grow bigger until the whole system fails." Taemin opened the panel with his tools and used his most powerful magnifier to look inside. At first he saw nothing. Then after searching for 20 minutes, he found it. A hairline, crack in a quantum processor so small that only the most advanced equipment could detect it. "How did you know?" he asked. His voice was full of amazement. This should be impossible to sense without taking the whole system apart. Kethra opened her eyes and smiled. It was the first real smile Jinwoo had seen from her. The Vorthak said my fingers were ugly and useless, but I can feel things that others cannot. The energy speaks to me and tells me where it hurts. From that day, everything changed. The crew began to understand that Kethra was not disabled or broken. She was gifted in ways they had never imagined. Her unusual body was perfectly designed for things that seemed like magic to humans. Nara, the communications officer, had been fighting. With a problem in the main computer for days, the system kept crashing whenever they tried to contact Earth. The error codes made no sense, and the backup computers were acting strange too. When Kethra touched the main console, her whole body began to glow. The patterns on her skin moved like waves on water, and her eyes became bright as stars. She stood very still for several minutes, while the computer screens around her flickered and danced. "The problem is not in the hardware," she said finally. "It is in the software. Someone put a virus in the system, but it is hiding very well. It changes its shape every few minutes like a creature that does not want to be caught. Nara had run every antivirus program they had but found nothing. How can you see a virus that our best programs cannot detect?" she asked. Kethra smiled again and placed both hands on the main keyboard. Her fingers moved so fast they were just a blur. She was typing commands that Nara had never seen before using code that seemed to be written in pure mathematics. "I do not see it with my eyes," she explained while she worked. "I feel it in the data streams. It has a different rhythm from the normal programs, like hearing one instrument playing out of tune in a big orchestra." Within 10 minutes, Kethra had found and destroyed the virus. It had been hiding in the quantum encryption protocols disguised as normal security code. The virus was so advanced that it would have taken their best computer experts weeks to find it. Jinwoo watched all of this with growing wonder and something else that he was not ready to name yet. Every day, Kethra showed new abilities that amazed him. Her mind worked in ways that seemed almost magical, but he knew it was really science that humans did not understand yet. The biggest test came when space pirates attacked the station. The raiders came out of hyperspace without warning and immediately started jamming all communications. Their ships were fast and well-armed, and they demanded that the station surrender all valuable cargo. Hyun-sik tried to activate the defense systems, but half of them would not respond. The weapons were old and had not been used in combat for years. Some of the targeting computers were offline, and the shield generators were running at only 60% power. "We cannot fight them like this," Hyun-sik said. His face was pale with worry. "We need to evacuate or surrender." But Kethra was already moving toward the main defense console. Her eyes were blazing with light brighter than Jinwoo had ever seen. Her skin patterns were moving so fast they looked like liquid fire flowing across her body. "Let me try," she said. Her voice was calm but determined. "I can make the systems work better." Placed her hands on the defense console, and suddenly, every screen in the command center came alive. The weapons systems that had been offline for months started humming with power. The targeting computers began working perfectly, and the shields strengthened to full power. But that was not the most amazing part. Kethra's unusual eyes could see the pirate ships even when they were using cloaking devices. The light spectrum she could see was much wider than human vision, and the cloaking technology did not work against her. "There they are," she said, pointing at empty space. 3 ships, hiding behind false light. "They think they are invisible, but I can see them clearly." The defense systems under Kethra's control fought like they never had before. Every shot hit its target perfectly, and the shields blocked every attack. The pirates had expected an easy victory against an old research station. Instead, they found themselves fighting a fortress controlled by a mind that could predict their every move. The pirate ships fled back into hyperspace after losing 2 of their vessels. The crew of the station cheered and celebrated, but Jinwoo felt something cold in his stomach. He realized that the Vorthak had thrown away someone who could have made their empire the strongest in the galaxy. That night, Kethra came to Jinwoo's quarters. She looked tired, but happy. Her skin still glowed softly from all the energy she had used during the battle. She sat down across from him, and her expression became serious. "I need to tell you something," she said. "There are others like me. The Vorthak have been throwing away people with gifts for thousands of years. They call us defective, but we are just different. We could have helped them become great, but they were too afraid of change." Jinwoo felt anger building in his chest. "How many?" he asked. "How many people like you have they destroyed? Too many to count." Kethra said sadly, "Entire bloodlines eliminated because they produced children who thought differently or looked unusual. The Vorthak fear anything that challenges their idea of perfection. As Jinwoo looked at this remarkable being sitting in his quarters, he made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He would not let the galaxy waste any more gifts like Kethra, and he would make sure that she never felt unwanted or ugly again. The Vorthak had called her their ugliest gift, but Jinwoo was beginning to see that she might be the most beautiful and valuable person he had ever met. Captain Jinwoo stood in his office looking out at the stars through the big window of Space Station Alpha 7. The coffee in his hand had gone cold hours ago, but he did not notice. His mind was busy with the strange message that came from the Vorthak Empire 3 days ago. The aliens had never talked to humans before. Today they sent their first diplomatic package, and Jinwoo did not know what to think about it. The message was short and cold like ice. The Vorthak ambassador had said very few words, but each word felt like a small insult. "We send you our most worthless possession." The message said, "This failed creature is suitable only for your primitive species. Do what you want with it. We care nothing for what happens to this broken thing." Jinwoo read the message 10 times. He could not understand why aliens would send something they called worthless as their first gift to humanity. His crew thought it might be a trap or maybe some kind of test. The Vorthak were known across the galaxy as a powerful empire that looked down on younger civilizations. The containment pod sat in Laboratory 3 waiting for him to open it. His science officer, Sora, had scanned it many times. The readings showed one life form inside, but the biological patterns were strange and hard to understand. The creature was alive, but barely. The medical scanners said it was very sick and hurt Taemin. His chief engineer thought they should send the pod back without opening it. He said it could be dangerous or carry diseases that might kill them all. Hyunsik, the pilot, agreed and wanted to push the pod out into space and let it drift away. But Jinwoo felt something different in his heart. He walked slowly to Laboratory 3. The doors opened with a soft hiss, and he stepped inside. The room was bright with white lights and filled with humming machines. The containment pod sat in the center like a metal coffin. It was silver and smooth with strange symbols carved into its surface. Sora was waiting for him with her medical equipment ready. She was a good doctor and had saved many lives, but her face looked worried. Her dark eyes showed fear and curiosity mixed together like oil and water. "Captain, are you sure about this?" she asked. Her voice was quiet. "We do not know what is inside. It could be very dangerous." Jinwoo nodded slowly, but his heart was beating fast. "I know," he said, "but we cannot send it back without looking. We are explorers. Sora, we came to space to learn about new things, not to run away from them." He reached for the control panel beside the pod. His fingers moved over the buttons while the machine beeped and clicked. The pod began to open with a sound like steam escaping from a kettle. White mist poured out and filled the air, making everything look like a dream. Through the mist, Jinwoo saw something that made his breath stop. It was not a monster or a weapon like his crew had feared. It was a young woman or something like a woman. Her body was thin and weak, like she had not eaten in many days. Her skin had strange patterns of dark and light colors that moved and changed like living art. Her arms and legs looked different from human limbs. They were longer and seemed to bend in ways that human bones could not. The aliens had called them twisted and broken, but Jin Woo thought they looked graceful, like the branches of a beautiful tree. Her face was narrow with high cheekbones, and her hair was silver white like moonlight. But it was her eyes that made Jin Woo forget how to breathe. They were large and bright with colors that changed from blue to green to purple. They glowed softly in the dim light, and when she looked at him, he felt like she could see into his soul. She was trying to sit up, but her body was too weak. She fell back against the soft padding inside the pod. Her breathing was quick and shallow like a frightened bird. Her strange eyes moved around the room, taking in everything, the machines, the lights, and the humans. Staring at her, Sora stepped forward with her medical scanner, but stopped when the creature made a soft sound. It was not exactly words, but it sounded like she was trying to speak. The universal translator on Jin Woo's belt beeped and started working. "Please," the machine said, in a voice that sounded like wind through leaves, "do not hurt me. I have done nothing wrong. I only wanted to learn to dream, to see the stars." Jin Woo felt his heart break a little. The voice was so sad and tired, like someone who had been hurt many times. He looked at this being that the Vorthak called ugly and worthless, and he could not understand their blindness. Yes, she looked different, but different did not mean ugly. Her strange markings were beautiful like living tattoos that told stories across her skin. Sora moved closer with her scanner, and the creature did not try to stop her. The medical readings showed old injuries that had healed badly and signs of long hunger and thirst. Her body was fighting to stay alive, but losing the battle slowly. "She needs food, water, and medicine right away," Sora said. Her voice was softer now, filled with the compassion that made her a good doctor. "She has been hurt many times and treated very badly." The creature tried to speak, again, and the translator worked harder to understand. "I am called Kethra," she said. "My people said I was broken because I asked questions. They said I was ugly because I looked different. They said I was worthless because I dreamed of flying among the stars." Jin Woo knelt down beside the pod so his face was level with hers. He had never seen eyes so full of pain and hope mixed together like rain and sunshine. "Kethra," he said slowly, testing how her name sounded. "You are safe now. No one will hurt you here." Her glowing eyes grew wide with surprise, like she could not believe his words. The patterns on her skin began to pulse with soft light that was beautiful to watch. Jin Woo realized that the markings were not scars or defects, they were part of how she showed her feelings, like humans smiled or frowned. "You think I am safe?" she asked. Her voice was getting stronger but still very quiet. "Your people will not cast me out like mine did," never, Jin Woo said, and he meant it with all his heart. "You are welcome here for as long as you want to stay. We judge people not by how they look, but by who they are inside." Kethra closed her eyes and tears that sparkled like diamonds rolled down her face. But these were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief and something that might have been the beginning of hope. For the first time in her life, someone had called her beautiful instead of broken. Sora began to treat her injuries while Tai Min and Hyun-sik watched from the doorway. They could see that their captain had made a decision that would change everything. The Vorthak had sent them what they thought was garbage, but Jin Woo saw a treasure that had been thrown away by people too blind to recognize its worth. As Kethra slowly got stronger over the next few hours, she began to tell them pieces of her story. She spoke 17 languages and could solve mathematical problems in her head that took computers minutes to process. Her twisted fingers could sense the flow of energy through machines, and her strange eyes could see types of light that humans could not even imagine. The Vorthak had called her a failed experiment, but Jin Wu began to understand the truth. She was not a failure. She was an evolution that her own people were too afraid to accept. 5 years had passed since Jin Wu and Kethra's wedding, and the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have imagined. The Department of Galactic Inclusion had grown into a massive organization with offices on hundreds of worlds helping refugee populations find new homes and opportunities. Kethra had kept her promise to cure the Vorthak plague, but she had given them something more valuable than medicine. She had given them a new way of thinking. The empire that once cast out anyone different now actively sought out unique individuals and celebrated their gifts. But success brought new challenges. The hyperspace gateway that Kethra had discovered was now operational, connecting distant parts of the galaxy in ways that had never been. Possible trade flourished and cultures mixed, but not everyone was happy with the changes. Some species feared that their traditional ways would be lost in the new interconnected galaxy. Others worried that humans were becoming too influential in galactic affairs. A few radical groups still believed that genetic purity was more important than diversity. And they plotted in the shadows. Jin Wu stood in his office, looking out at the bustling space lanes around the station. Hundreds of ships passed by every day, carrying beings from every corner of the galaxy. The sight filled him with pride, but also with worry. The unity they had built was fragile, and there were forces working to tear it apart. Kethra entered the office carrying their infant daughter in her arms. Little Surah had inherited her mother's bioluminescent skin and her father's dark eyes. Her tiny patterns glowed with contentment as she slept in her mother's embrace. "The council meeting is in an hour," Kethra said softly. "Are you ready for the vote?" Jin Wu nodded, but his stomach was tight with anxiety. The Galactic Council was voting on whether to make the inclusion policies mandatory for all member species. It was the culmination of years of work, but the opposition was fierce. Many species still believed that they had the right to reject or exile their own citizens based on genetic differences or unusual abilities. The vote would determine whether the galaxy moved forward into a new age of acceptance or fell back into the old ways of prejudice and fear. The council chamber was packed with representatives from over 200 species. Jin Wu and Kethra took their seats in the human section, while their daughter played quietly with light toys that responded to her glowing touch. The debate was fierce and sometimes ugly. Representatives from the old guard species argued that forced inclusion would destroy their cultures and traditions. They claimed that some beings were naturally inferior and that accepting them would weaken their societies, but other voices spoke for change. The Alterian delegate told of how accepting their outcasts had led to incredible scientific breakthroughs. The Nexus Federation representative explained how diversity had made their civilization stronger and more resilient. When it was Kethra's turn to speak, she stood slowly and walked to the central podium. Her skin glowed with calm determination, and her voice carried clearly through the vast chamber. "I stand before you as living proof that your discarded treasures are often your greatest gifts," she began. "I was called ugly, broken, and worthless by my own people. Yet here I am helping to heal plagues, discover gateways, and build bridges between worlds." She looked around. The chamber meeting, the eyes of beings from dozens of species. "The question before you today is not whether you have the right to cast out those who are different. The question is whether you can afford to keep wasting the gifts that difference brings." The Vorthak delegate stood up unexpectedly. He was one of the new generation of leaders who had risen after the plague. "5 years ago, my people made the greatest mistake in our history," he said. "We threw away Kethra because she did not fit our narrow definition of perfection. Today, our civilization is stronger than it has ever been because we learned to value what we once rejected." One by one, other delegates began to share their stories. A Rigelian told of how accepting psychic outcasts had revolutionized their communication systems. A Centauri described how their four-armed engineers had built impossible structures that became wonders of the galaxy. When the vote was finally taken, the result was closer than Jinwu had hoped, but it was enough. The inclusion policies passed by a narrow margin and became galactic law. Every member species would now be required to provide sanctuary and opportunity for their outcasts. That night, there was a celebration aboard the station representatives. From friendly species joined the crew and refugee communities for a party that lasted until dawn. Kethra danced with beings from a dozen worlds, her skin creating light shows that painted the walls with moving art. But the real celebration came. Later, when Jinwu and Kethra were alone with their daughter in their quarters, the baby was fascinated by the stars visible through their window, her tiny hands reaching toward the distant lights, as if she wanted to touch them. "You promised once to put the stars in my hands," Kethra said softly as she watched their daughter tonight. "I think you finally did." Jinwu smiled and held his family close. The Hyperspace Gateway project has been